All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast, Fantasy Football for the Average Joe. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. My brother, this is the Season 2 finale, baby. Last episode of the year. A little tear is coming down my eye, man. How do you feel? Describe to me your feelings.
In like what, 3 or less words? Like sad, happy, and proud.
Yes. I'm grateful. You know what I'm grateful for, man? I am grateful for all of the support we've gotten. We're just doing this thing, and we're going to keep fucking doing this thing, just so everybody knows. We have a blast with it. This is my favorite hobby in the world. I love it, man. And I'm grateful to all of the family, the Frankly Fantasy Football family. How's that for alliteration? You like that?
Amazing.
Yeah, friends and family. Our following has grown. We're spread out amongst every platform, so it's a little frustrating. You know, you see incremental growth here and there on YouTube and on Spotify, on Google, on Apple, just everywhere podcasts are. People are finding us on weird shit too. Do you ever see those analytics and see some of those strange platforms? Like who isn't using Apple or Google or Spotify at this point? Like who's going to make the choice? You know what? I'm going to watch these guys on Friendster, whatever the fuck. There's all these different platforms. I'm like, really? You know? But thank you so much to everybody. You've really grown this year. Next year, we're really excited about some things that we're planning. We just want to get better every single year, and we want your feedback. Please send us feedback. Let us know how we can make it better. How can we better entertain you? How can we give you better information? How can we make the flow better? Just give us advice. We will not be offended. I won't want criticism. Criticize me. Say, hey, you know what, Johnny? When you've got your shirt off, when you lose these bets, you need to work on your fucking shoulders, man. You need to get the... Give me anything. I can take it. Trust me. I'm not a young man. I'm not too sensitive here. I can handle it. But yeah, man, this has been a blast, buddy. And I'm thankful and grateful for you too, man. There's nobody else I'd rather be doing this with. It's just the two of us getting up here talking about shit we talk about anyway. And hopefully it helps people win their leagues, man. You know?
Oh, totally, man. And right back at you, John. I'm so grateful for you and to be able to do this with. We're wrapping up season 2, guys. And shout out, John. Like we hit over 50 episodes. Like think about that. 50 episodes, and to all the listeners and viewers, and man, we love you guys. Like genuinely from our souls. Like we love you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've gotten so many good, messages on social media and emails and people just hitting us up saying, wow, this is crazy. Good shit. And found out we were in 4 countries, John. 4 countries this year. And just, guys, this train is rolling. Let's keep it going. We're gearing up as we're gearing down season 2, we're gearing up for season 3. So it's not a goodbye. It's a see you soon, baby.
It is a see you soon. I mean, we're going to be kicking up here in a few months, man. I mean, this is not, it's not like we get a huge off season here, and I'm happy. I love it, man. Give me a couple of months break. Let's see what's going on, get all new information, dig into it, and then we can help you guys get ready for your draft come July, which is going to be fantastic, man. Don't forget to follow us on social media. In the off season, we are going to have some Instagram reels going on, some videos, some live videos. You'll see Frankie and Johnny out in the wild, perhaps with the combine, perhaps with the NFL draft, perhaps with some games and things. So follow us on social media, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Frankly Fantasy Football, and on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. Now, this episode, we don't have the cute little sound effects. We don't have the music. We don't have segments. This is an episode we talked about, you know what, let's give some people some things to think about here in the off season. We're going to talk about some free agents. We're going to talk about some of these free agents that are going to be fantasy relevant in some capacity, and they could be on new teams next year. So these are guys we'll talk about early in the season next year. Probably second, third episode, we'll be getting into new faces and new places like we do every year. These are some of the guys we're going to be watching here. So let's get into it a little bit, man. All right, what we're going to do, we're going to look at the AFC and the NFC. We're going to break it down by position: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, and also some coaching changes, because that does make a difference here. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to jump right in. I did the NFC, Frankie did the AFC, and we're both going to kind of shed a little color on some of these guys that we think might be big free agency pickups here. All right, let's start with some quarterbacks here, Frankie. So I'm looking at the NFC. A couple of guys that I think are going to be fantasy relevant here. I think a few of these teams are going to keep their current quarterback, but I think a few of these guys, definitely one of them is going to go to a team and make an immediate impact. First, let's start off by talking about Geno Smith. Geno Smith is a free agent. What do you see happening with Geno Smith here? Do you think he's going to stay in Seattle? Do you think they're going to continue to give him the opportunity, or do you think he's going to move on and take what he's done and find another team?
You know, John, I think he is going to stay in Seattle. I think that would be the smart move for Seattle. I mean, he's, in my eyes, no question, comeback player of the year this year. And the way he was able to develop within that offense, the way he was able to distribute the ball, be very effective, lead the team to a playoff, I think that there is a lot of good shit there. So for me, I think you can get Geno Smith cheap if you're the Seahawks. You can keep him there. You can continue to build around him. So for me, man, I think it makes a lot of sense to keep him where he is.
I do too. I mean, he's surprised me the most of all the quarterbacks. I wrote off the Seahawks this year because of their choice between Drew Lock and Geno Smith, and I think they end up keeping him. That seems to make the most sense. Build a bigger team, let him run the team for 2 more years, and then look at another quarterback. At this point, I think they can make bigger strides elsewhere. Daniel Jones, quarterback for the New York Football Giants. He's going to be a free agent, and this is a little interesting to me. Now, the team made the playoffs. Very surprised team this year. Brian Daboll could be, rookie coach of the year, basically. Very interesting. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Daniel Jones. Do you think they re-sign Daniel Jones? I'm not a giant fan of Daniel Jones, but I think he's good enough to be on that team. A giant fan.
That was so good. Look at you.
That was really good. Dad jokes, baby. I'm a dad. But I don't think he's gotten a fair shot, to be quite honest, perfectly frank with you. Be perfectly frank. Oh my God, I am a pun motherfucker today. I know, man. I don't think he got a fair shot. I think the receiver room was a fucking nightmare. We're going to talk about them as well, because 3 of their receivers are free agents this year as well. So in my mind, I would sign him to a shorter term deal, a 2-3 year deal. And I would build a team around him, give him a chance. He's got a rushing floor. He is a good passer. I think if they can build up some weapons around him, I think give him that chance before you cut ties and reset. What do you think about that?
Yeah, man, I think that Daniel Jones, I think they need to keep him on the squad this year. Now, the issue is, they declined the 5th year. Wasn't really sure how it was going to pan out. Then all of a sudden, John, now they have to potentially pay Saquon Barkley, who already turned down a Nick Chubb type of deal. So there is a lot that they are going to have to do in order to make this happen with Daniel Jones. Now, I do think it would make sense for a 2-year extension, 3-year extension, if you can get him in the high 20s, low 30s type of contract. He didn't put up blazing numbers by any means, but he didn't make mistakes this year. And that was the biggest thing. Now, his rushing was off the chart. They called him, White Vic is what Saquon was saying. And boy, did he look like it in half the time. And so, and what you saw too was his delivery of the football getting out of his hand much quicker this year. And that's something Brian Daboll did very well with Josh Allen as well. So what we saw, and again, I'm not comparing Daniel Jones to Josh Allen in terms of talent. I'm comparing them in terms of Brian Daboll coaching them. And so I really like what Daboll has the ability to do here. If I am on the Giants, I would definitely try to re-sign Daniel Jones to one of those contracts and start building out a better receiver room to help him out.
And I don't think they franchise tag him either. I don't think they can really afford it. They've got so many free agents this year. That GM for the Giants has his work cut out for him, man. Does. They've got Daniel Jones. They've got Saquon Barkley. They've got 3 receivers in Sterling Shepard, Richie James, and Darius Slayton. They're all free agents. So they're going to have to make some decisions, man. But Brian Daboll, I can see him. He was there when Josh Allen with the Stephon Diggs trade. Yes. I can see them saying, you know what? We're not going to cut ties with Daniel Jones until we give him a fucking stud and see what he can do with it. So very interesting, man. All right, the last one I really want to talk about. This is a guy I think is going to have a huge impact. He's not going to be on his same team. And this is a guy who will be going to a new team and most likely starting in the NFL. So he's going to have some major fantasy implications here. Jimmy Garoppolo, the San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy's a free agent. He's not going to be in San Francisco. Yeah, he's just not. He's going to be starting. He's going to get a contract. What are some things you're hearing? Any rumors? What teams do you think make the most sense for Jimmy G right now? This is so early, man. But let's just talk a little bit about what we think.
So, John, there's a few teams, right? I mean, but like I'm just going to throw out one that could make sense, the Jets, but I don't think that's going to be the destination he ends up, because
I think the Jets have a big purse ready to go for somebody, and I think Jimmy G would be a fallback option for the Jets.
I totally agree. Yeah. I think the Colts or Panthers are interesting. But again, with them being so high in the draft, guys, I think they're going to go younger QB here and look to draft a guy. For me, there's one spot that I think Jimmy G could flourish, not just do well, flourish. It is with the Raiders. And I say that for a few specific reasons. Number one, he is now in the AFC, not NFC, right? So it makes a better difference, or a little bit of a difference, I guess, in terms of play style and things of that nature. Number two, Josh Daniels, being the head coach there, was the OC over at the Patriots when Jimmy Garoppolo was there. When Jimmy Garoppolo was starting, he was able to find a very good offensive scheme to put around him to help accentuate what he does very well. And it's basically, I don't want to say poor man's because of the way Jimmy Garoppolo played. He's very similar to Alex Smith in the way he operated. And so now you have him added to a Raiders team with a good offensive line, with a stack receiver room, and Hunter Renfrow and Mac Hollins, who I get it, he's a free agent at this point in time, might not be there, but also Devontae Adams, and you have Darren Waller and all this other shit going on. I really think that right there, that style of offense, very familiar with the head coach, understanding the offensive schemes he's looking to put together. Oh, and by the way, no question, the best receiver he's ever played with in his career with Devontae Adams. So for me, man, this could be a very interesting spot for that of Jimmy G.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. That seems to make the most sense. Other quarterbacks in the NFC, not going to get into it because I don't think that, number one, they're going to be starting, and number two, that they're going to have a huge, fantasy value. Baker Mayfield is a free agent. Taylor Heineke, Sam Darnold, and Gardner Minshew. Those guys will certainly be on teams and will most likely be backups. If you've got to settle for one of those guys, you are rebuilding, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What do we have in the AFC this year, Frank?
So AFC, we have one guy that's standing above the rest right now, John, and it is Mr. Lamar Jackson. So guys, right now it is really interesting to see what the hell is happening here. He's been outright saying he will hold out. He just came out yesterday and said he will hold out if the Ravens tag him. So he will not show up and play, which that you can assume that would be the thing. Now, it's interesting with Lamar, John. Now, if he were to be tagged right now based on Spot Track, he would be making $45.4 million this year. Now, the interesting thing is the Ravens could technically, if they smooth it over, he ends up playing, they could technically tag him again. Now, that's what's interesting. If they tag him in 2024, assuming he doesn't go to a different team, things like that, he would be looking upwards of 54 to 55 million. Now, it worked out for Dak Prescott. It worked out for Kirk Cousins. They both held out. They were tagged. They got paid. My fear with Lamar, though, is that if he gets hurt while he's tagged, he's going to be screwed on that longevity of an additional contract. What I mean by that is a 4-year deal, 5-year deal, 6-year deal, something like that. Yeah. So for me, man, I think what happens is he's going to get tagged and he's going to get traded. And I think his potential landing spots right now, and I know this sounds crazy as shit.
So real quick, you think he's going to be tagged in 23 and then traded in 24?
No. Good. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
tagged
just wanted
in 23
some clarity.
And traded in 23.
Because he'll sit out and force it.
Exactly. So Okay. So then,
which means though that a team that he's traded to, they're going to have to pick up his tag.
They're going to have to either pick up his tag and or sign him. And so it's going to be interesting. And so the potential landing spots, John. I mean, Jets make kind of a lot of sense with that scheme. I mean,
that team would be sick, man.
Be nuts with Lamar. I mean, you can also see, they totally want him. And let's call it what it is. The Jets are going after Lamar and Aaron Rodgers. Those are the two guys. Let's just put the money on the table. Okay.
Yeah.
The other few teams that make a lot of sense to me, man, the Patriots. Mac Jones has seen a decline. If he were to be able to get, now, I say Patriots, but they're going to have to figure some things out from a contract perspective, cap space, all that stuff, but it makes sense. But my number one is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have a lot to give in terms of pay. They have good cap space. They're in the NFC, so therefore, if the Ravens are looking to trade him, they're out of the AFC. And in addition, that scheme that they have, John, it just makes sense. They have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson. Yeah, their defense sucks, but if you bring in Lamar, you can start building the defense now rather than having to rely on Marcus Mariota or trying to get Desmond Ridder up and ready when he probably needs at least 3-4 more years to learn behind somebody like that of Lamar. So for me, man, that makes a lot of sense at the Falcons. So I think it's going to be really interesting. What do you think?
Drake London's the best receiver that Lamar will have ever played with. Easily the best receiver. And he's young. It'll be his second year in. Kyle Pitts. You think Mark Andrews is a stud? We've seen how Lamar Jackson throws to a tight end. That was his only option. This could unlock Kyle Pitts and finally see that ceiling of a tight end or receiver, to be honest. I think he runs mostly as a receiver, but that could be very interesting. Yeah, I like that take. All right, the Lamar sweepstakes. This is going to be drama all off season. It's going to be in our news notes segment. I guarantee it, all off season leading up to the preseason here. Yeah, I agree. Who else you got, brother?
John, I also got Tyler Huntley here. So the Pro Bowler, Tyler
Huntley. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to hear your shit. You already got it off your chest in last week's episode. We don't need to do that today.
In my opinion, he's going to be staying with the Ravens in this. I just think that they're going to end up re-signing him. He's going to be a backup in some capacity. Shit, maybe he's even the starter if Lamar leaves. They're going to look to rebuild at that point. And then, John, number 3 that I want to hit on here is Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is really interesting. I think he's going to be more like a backup type of role. Love it. Yeah. Like that of a Ryan Fitz, a Case Keenum type of role, like an elevated backup, not a guy that's constantly sitting and waiting. I think it's a guy that can actually get in and give some good minutes based on what he did this past year. So again, those are probably the top 3 free agent quarterbacks in the AFC. And then a few, honorable mentions. You could say Mike White, Joe Flacco, again, Jets. You have Jarrett Stidham, who is the Raiders. They wanted to see what he had. And then you also had Case Keenum for the Bills. And so all those guys are going to be looking for some new homes potentially.
All right, well, there's 2 guys I wanted to end with, but one of them is Tom Brady, and he's gone. He is retired. He's saying goodbye. He's hanging him up. One guy we didn't talk about yet is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going to be going on with Aaron Rodgers?
John, I really think the Packers are moving on. I think there has been multiple reports inside the organization from, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, and a few others that are saying Packers are ready. They're ready to move on from him, and they want to really see what they have out of Jordan Love. They traded up to draft him in first round, all this shit. And I think it's the right move. I think it's the right move, man.
I think he's done. I think he's had enough of the Packers. I think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think he can go to another team now and try to win another Super Bowl. He wants to be in that conversation a step below Tom Brady.
Yep.
I mean, he just does, and he can play for a few more years. I think he's got still some juice in him still to be able to do that.
Yep.
Dude, it's going to be the Jets, man.
It's got to be the Jets.
It's going to be the Jets. They brought in Nathaniel Hackett, who used to be offensive coordinator for the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. They are courting him immediately. I mean, and it would be incredible. I mean, think about Garrett Wilson and the whole receiving. Elijah Moore will be elevated in fantasy. Brees Hall, holy shit, is he going to be my darling and champion next year? That defense, man, Sauce Gardner, by far rookie of the year in defense. I mean, just absolutely incredible. That would be so much fun. I'll be a Jets, Jets, man. I'll be wearing shirts for the Jets next year if that happens, because that team will be exciting as fuck.
So fun.
Anywhere else that he could potentially look at going? Any other rumors out there?
You know, John, there are some flying around. Like the Raiders was another one, right? Getting into the AFC rather than out of the NFC. They have Devontae. It makes a lot of sense. They're going to be.
Can you imagine if the both of them were together again?
I mean, dude, and playing indoors, like it would just be crazy. So that's been, on the radar. But everything, dude, everything is pointing to that of the Jets.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that they're going to do everything they can. I mean, this could be one of the coolest deals ever made just to be able to get him, I think, too. It could be really exciting. All right, let's get to running backs, brother. Why don't you start with your running backs in the AFC?
Let's do it. So the first running back, John, is Josh Jacobs, guys. Again, just as a refresher, Josh Jacobs did not get his fifth year option, which means that he is an unrestricted free agent. He also won the rushing title this year with over 1,600 yards, went absolutely apeshit nuts. And I think the Raiders are doing everything humanly possible to keep him. Now, the interesting thing is, as I mentioned, John, he has turned down a Nick Chubb offer, which was $12 million a year for 3 years, $36 million overall. He said he wants a Saquon type of deal, which puts him in the $15 million range a year, which, guys, that is a huge difference, and especially in a running back position to give, longevity, which means at least 3-4 years, plus that additional cap on, compared to the 12 mil a year. So that's going to be crazy, John. So for me, I still think Raiders are in the driver's seat to sign him. I really believe that. They're going to get a new quarterback. They want some continuity there. And if he doesn't, John, there's a slew of teams that will absolutely be lining up to take this cat. Definitely. Like that of Miami, the Bills, the Bears, the Rams. There is a slew of teams right now that make a lot of sense. But for me, man, it's got to be the Raiders.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't blame Josh Jacobs for that at all. He had the best year of his entire career. He's a running back. Maybe he has a couple of years left.
Yeah.
This is his contract. So this is his only and last chance really to get paid. So yeah, man, maximize that deal. You might get a couple of years left in the NFL. He had a great season. He's a great running back. So do it, man. Get paid. Set yourself up for the rest of your life, Definitely.
Yeah. Can't hate on the dude. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Exactly.
It's number two. Yeah, it's a business. And John, number two from a free agency perspective for AFC running backs, it's our boy Kareem Hunt.
He's going to be the big splash,
He's going to be the big splash, man. Yeah. I think, again, Josh Jacobs is going to stay at the Raiders. I'm telling you right now, Kareem makes a lot of sense in my eyes for 3 teams right off the bat / a fourth. The 3 teams right off the bat, Broncos, to be that 1-2 punch with Javonte. I think that, Latavius is a free agent as well. He's no longer going to be there. They paid Chase Edmonds. He looks like shit. Not going to be there. I think he's going to be actually cut to save cap. I think they could bring on a guy like Kareem Hunt to help bolster that. And imagine that now with a Sean Payton. Are you kidding me? So that makes a lot of sense, John, to me. Number 2 is the Bills.
Now, real quick, when you said Sean Payton and Kareem Hunt, that kind of sounds like Alvin Kamara to me.
And Alvin Kamara with Mark Ingram. This is exactly the 1-2 punch that Sean Payton did so well with the Saints, John. That 1-2 punch being Alvin Kamara with that of Kareem Hunt and Mark Ingram being that Javonte. And so to your point, it's a perfect example. It makes so much sense.
If Kareem Hunt gets paired up with Sean Payton, I mean, you want to talk about PPR fucking gold, man. This guy should be a top 10 running back. He's looking at 10 targets a game. Yep. I mean, crazy. Very excited to see what happens here.
Very excited. And then number 2, John, would be the Bills. Bills make a hell of a lot of sense with Devin Singletary kind of being a free agent here. Don't really know if he did enough to kind of put him over the hump for another contract there, especially with James Cook. They're going to want to elevate a little bit further. So that's interesting. And number 3 for me, man, is the Bears. The Bears, to me, make so much sense. They have the most cap space in the NFL. David Montgomery is a free agent. Khalil Herbert had a massive injury this past year. They bring in a whole new coaching staff. You have Justin Fields, who is just craving for anything to help him. and you bring in a Kareem Hunt like guy, you get a couple other receivers. This Bears team now is fucking legit. And so that makes a lot of sense. And
they're likely to trade that first pick.
Yeah,
and just
I agree.
Pile up some picks. So I think that they do look at bolstering the offensive line, getting a receiver out there. So if they can get somebody like a Kareem Hunt, Justin Fields and Kareem Hunt together could be super exciting for fantasy, especially.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, fantasy would be awesome, man. And then that fourth team, John, that would make a little bit of sense is Miami. And I say that because with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert both being free agents this year, they might cut ties with both. And I'm not.
They might, man. I mean, these guys are fragile. They both got hurt. They had 1-year deals. If they can solidify a guy like Kareem Hunt, who's also dangerous in the passing game, how do you cover those guys, man? You know?
That makes a lot of sense, Sean. And so I'm just going to name off a few of the other guys real quick here. We had Jeff Wilson, again, that I mentioned, Raheem Mostert, free agent, Devin Singletary, David Montgomery, Latavius Murray, Kenyon Drake. Here's another interesting one. Damian Harris. That's fascinating. We have James Robinson, who's also really interesting because, he got traded from the Jags to the Jets and never played. So that's interesting. You have Samaje Perine, who is the backup in Cincinnati, who had a very good role, a James White type of role.
Yeah.
He also, there's also Jerick McKinnon. That's also very interesting. And then the last one here, there's a few others, but D'Ernest Johnson. When he's gotten the opportunity to play, the dude has balled out. So watch him going somewhere super cheap and watch him explode if he gets an opportunity. So those are the top ranked free agents there in the AFC, John, for running backs.
So the Browns are unlikely to keep D'Ernest Johnson. Is that right?
Yeah, because part of the reason is because they ended up drafting Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati in the 5th round last year, and he really performed well. So I would assume they're going to move on.
A couple of interesting ones here. David Montgomery. I mean, this is a guy who he's good. I mean, he's got juice. He's good. Any potential landing spots? Any rumors there? Do you see the Bears re-signing him, or do you see them letting him go based on the contract?
I really don't see him resigning with the Bears, John. And I say that because this staff didn't necessarily gel well with his playing style. And it's not a knock on either of them. It's just like, hey, you want French fries today? Nah, man, I want mashed potatoes. They're both potatoes. They're both really good, right? But you might prefer something over the other, right? It's a great analogy. God, I'm fucking hungry.
You're a brilliant analyst, man. I got to tell you.
But yeah, you know what I mean? So for me, man, I don't see that happening by any means. I see he could be interesting in going to maybe to a Ravens to help bolster that running back front. They'll end up cutting ties with that of Kenyon Drake, cut ties with that of potentially Gus Edwards, and then maybe end up, bolstering that with JK, a 1-2 punch. But yeah, for me, man, I don't see him being a Bear next year.
Okay, let's look at some of the running backs in the NFC here. I think a lot of these guys are going to end up signing on the teams that they're on, but they are free agents currently. The big one, Saquon Barkley. I mean, Saquon Barkley is scheduled to be a free agent. What are they going to do with him? They have to keep him.
You have to.
Again, this is the GM, probably not sleeping at all until everything's done for the New York Giants, but they've got to keep Saquon Barkley. He was the cornerstone of that team this year. Miles Sanders will also be a potential Super Bowl winner and a free agent next year. Do you see these guys keeping Miles Sanders? I'm not so sure.
I don't know, John. And I say that because Miles Sanders is going to want to get that paycheck. And I don't know if he's actually earned it. And I know it's bad to say. I don't think
so either. I know.
And I think they were interested in Gainwell. Dude, Gainwell's explosive. And you have Boston Scott, and I get it. They're not 100% Miles Sanders, but I don't know, man. It's going to be crazy.
Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary are very similar to me.
Yes.
They're guys with a lot of talent, but they're guys on great teams. But they haven't really gone apeshit on those teams. Like you would see, you put a Kareem Hunt in either of those two situations, and I think you're looking at a guy who is a top 5 running back in the league. And I don't think Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary are those guys. I think they're above average, very good running backs, but I don't think they're stars. I think they're in great situations. So I wouldn't get too excited about either of those two guys getting picked up by other teams and wanting to immediately draft them in the 2nd, 3rd round, which is probably where they would go 3rd, 4th round in next year's draft. I'd be really wary about bringing those guys onto my team in new situations. We got a couple other guys here. Jamal Williams. I can't imagine the Lions getting. He's got to re-sign with the Lions. I mean, he's such an important piece, and you cannot roll with just DeAndre Swift. You can't. I mean, you can't unless you get a guy like a David Montgomery. Unless you replace him with a David Montgomery. But Jamal Williams,
just a culture piece.
It's a culture piece. He's a leadership piece. He's outspoken. He's, I think Dan Campbell loves Jamal Williams, and I don't think anything's going to happen there.
I actually hope he gets paid, John. Sorry to interject.
I do too.
I hope he gets paid.
I do too. Yeah, absolutely. He's a touchdown machine. Let's talk about another touchdown machine here. Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys. No chance they get rid of Tony Pollard.
No chance.
The only way they get rid of Tony Pollard is if it's just a money thing. They can't come together business-wise. Because Zeke's way, he's on the last couple of years of his running back life. I think the only reason he's still even producing is because Tony Pollard's there. Zeke can't he can't, tote the rock 30 times a game. It's not happening again. Okay, a couple of other guys just to mention here that will be on other teams. Deontay Foreman, David Montgomery, like we mentioned, Rashad Penny, very interesting there. And Alexander Mattison. I don't see them losing Alexander Mattison. It's just such a safety blanket, and it's hard to even think about Alexander Mattison on another team, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's just always that Dalvin Cook.
Dude, he could be that guy that ends up getting paid. Like he could end up getting a 3-year deal. 10 mil a year, 8 mil a year. Like, I think we've seen enough sample size of him. Here's a question for you, John. Would you rather have Alexander Mattison or David Montgomery? If you're a GM on a team.
It's tough. I mean, David Montgomery's had a history of many injuries, but it's also because he was such a cornerstone of that team.
Sure.
Alexander Mattison comes in and he doesn't need to worry about that. He starts maybe 3 games a year when Dalvin Cook goes down, and he plays out of his fucking mind, but he's fresh. You give him a full workload, I don't know. For a full season, I'm not sure. I would probably take the fresh legs, though, to be honest. If we're talking about my money that I'm spending, I'm taking the fresh legs with Alexander Mattison. What about Miami for Alexander Mattison?
That's what I was just going to say. That makes a lot of sense because you can get a guy like him when you already had to pay Tyreek, right? You're going to have to start getting ready to get the checkbook out for Waddle because you're not letting his ass go.
Yeah, and they'll open it up for him.
So then you sign Alexander Mattison to a 2-3-year deal, 6 mil a year, right? Something like that.
High incentive based, Yeah,
makes
absolutely.
a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like that. All right, how about receivers here? How about some AFC receivers, Frankie? What do you got going on?
Yeah, man. So looking at the receiver landscape, it's actually kind of meh in the AFC world. There's some good pieces, but it's meh. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is the number one AFC free agent receiver, guys, is Juju. Right? Good quality. He actually had a good year this year, right? He's almost at 1,000 yards. Kind of shockingly. Will he be with the Chiefs next year? I don't see it. I actually see him potentially going to maybe the Packers, right? Somewhere where they could establish a vet there to really help out maybe a young QB or whatever it may be to really step in and be that 1 or 2, receiver there on the team. So Juju being, that number 1 receiver from the undrafted side, unrestricted free agent side. Number 2 is another interesting one, John, and it's Jakobi Meyers. And I say that's interesting because this dude was, just going to say it, he wasn't supposed to be very good. And he has really done an excellent job is at the opportunities he's gotten with the Pats. And you got to think the Patriots are not a pass-first team. And so he's actually been able to eat while still being on a team that does not do a very good job throwing the ball effectively down the field. And so Jakobi Meyers, what if he goes to the Chiefs? That makes a lot of sense. He's a safe haven for Patrick Mahomes. They would have the ability, knowing that they don't have to pay Juju. They could sign Jakobi to a 2-year deal, something like that, for let's call it 6 mil a year, 8 mil a year, and be happy as hell with that. And then he can also mentor that of a Sky Moore, etc. That type of shit. So what I'm getting at is Jakobi Meyers is a really good option for a lot of teams, including that of, I mentioned the Chiefs. The Browns make a lot of sense there as a true number 2/number 3. You could even look at him going to potential Raiders. And I say that because the Raiders are going to lose Matt Collins. He's the number 3 guy that I'm talking about here for an unrestricted free agent. I don't see him being re-signed. He had a very good year And he's going to try to get paid. And I think that the Raiders won't look to pay him what he's looking for, so they might look to pay a guy like Jacoby. So that's interesting.
Was McDaniels with the team when they drafted Jacoby Myers? That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I don't
Maybe
know.
he may have left and done a head coaching gig in Denver at that time. I'm not 100% sure, but interesting. If he was part of that regime, that could be an interesting fit. Jacoby Myers can be very fantasy relevant, not as a number one. He needs to go to a team with a good quarterback and an established number one receiver. You bring him in as a number 2 or 3, I think he can shine. If he's going to be relied upon as the number 1, it's going to be, I think, pretty tough to really feel good about having him on your team.
Yep.
Who else do we have? We got a bunch of guys that are just kind of Jags, right?
Yeah,
just a guy.
Yeah. So we got Marvin Jones Jr. We got Chris Moore from Houston, Mecole Hardman, and then we got your boy from Indy and OSU, and right here in Akron, Ohio, my man Paris Campbell. Shout out to Paris. I hope you get paid, brother. But I think that the Colts will look to keep him as well. But some really good, interesting receivers there in the AFC.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's look at the NFC here again. Not any giant splash guys here that we're looking at is for wide receiver. I mean, these are very much kind of just guys.
Yep.
They're going to be guys you're going to be starting at some point in your league, but it's not somebody you're drafting high. It's not somebody you're hoping to plug in. It's somebody you might have to plug in. Looking at some of these guys, Allen Lazard, Darius Slayton, Richie James, DJ Chark could be interesting. He definitely flashed, and I absolutely think that the Lions will say goodbye with Jameson Williams coming on. Greg Dortch could be interesting. Juice, Jarvis Landry, he's a free agent as well. I think some of these guys, it might be time to just, say goodbye to a few of these guys. I don't see Jarvis Landry coming on and making a giant impact on a team. It's possible, but his health and his age are definitely getting him to be a problem. Bless him, baby. Sterling Shepard also. So 3 receivers from the Giants, like we talked about, are going to be free agents.
It's a good thing they have Kenny Golladay.
Thank God we've got Kenny Golladay, the most expensive contract in the entire organization. Yeah, and then the last guy here is OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr. He had a video come out this week of showing his workouts, and he's making cuts and all that kind of stuff. I don't really give a shit right now. I don't see teams going crazy over him. I think he's going to want more than he's worth in the locker room. He's an issue. He's a locker room issue guy. I rooted for him when he was with the Browns. He was a problem. A lot of stuff came out after the fact. It's not a guy you're going to want to put in with a rookie quarterback, especially on a team rebuilding. I think that's going to fuck your locker room up. He's going to have to go somewhere with a coach who can, tell him to shut the fuck up. Somebody he respects, and with a quarterback that isn't going to put up with his garbage and put up with his shit. So I don't know what's going to happen with OBJ. There'll be sweepstakes. I don't think they're that big of sweepstakes. I don't know how much he's got left in the tank, to be honest. He could not come back this year. Teams did not want him. So I don't know. What do you think? Anything about OBJ?
Honestly, John, I've kind of been numb to it. And I know that sounds bad, but it's just like I'm tired of the carousel with OBJ. And then I just don't care anymore. The airport shit kind of just put a really bad taste in my mouth, whether you thought it was right or wrong. And I'm talking you being the viewers and listeners, and that, whatever you thought, good for you. But for me, it put a bad taste in my mouth, and it kind of correlates to exactly how he would probably be in a locker room, kind of a stingy ass. And so to your point, John, I mean, he's been banged up, he's been hurt, he's, issues from a personality perspective. So I don't know. I don't know where he fits.
Yeah, I don't either. He may not fit very many places. That's for sure. All right, let's look at a couple of tight ends. We're not going to spend a ton of time here because the tight end carousel is shit. Frank, what are some AFC tight ends that could be fantasy relevant next year?
There's two AFC ones that I love, and it's weird I'm even this hyped up about it, but it's true. One is Evan Ingram. That dude finally became that dude. He was drafted in the first round out of Ole Miss. Terrible shit with the Giants. I mean, literally they gave him away at that point, and he shined. Not only shined, he thrived with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. They will resign him, and mark my word, it will be not to the level, in my opinion, of that of Njoku. I think it could be a little bit less, but I think that's a really good way. I think he's going to get a 3-4 year deal. They're going to lock his ass in as a really nice piece for that of Trevor Lawrence for a long time. And then, John, the second guy that I really wanted to hit on is Hayden Hurst. The Bengals bring him in for 1 year. And what we saw for this 1 year, he became the third best option. He superseded that of Tyler Boyd. He really helped out Joe Burrow. Had a really good year for what he was able to do. And he did good from a blocking perspective as well. So for me, I think it would be asinine for the Bengals not to resign him. I definitely think they will, even with Drew Sample and a few others. I think actually Drew Sample might be a free agent now as well. But they have a bunch of other guys that aren't to that caliber. So I think that they would really be missing the mark if they did not bring back Hayden Hurst. But John, there's a few other guys. Austin Hooper for the Tennessee Titans. Jordan Atkins for the Texans. Foster Moreau. With that of the Vegas Raiders, and Mike Gesicki. He's an interesting one that could probably do better than what he's been able to do previously. But again, just those guys are just, going to be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah, Miami's going to let Gesicki go. I think he's a receiving tight end, and they used him a lot in pass blocking, and run blocking. And I think they're gonna find guys for that with that skill set. They inherited Mike Gesicki on that team, but he could be interesting on a team that does pass a lot, no question. NFC tight ends, we're looking at Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys. He'll sign with the Cowboys, I think. He's too important to Dak. Robert Tonyan. Not sure what'll happen there. I think he's an above average tight end. I'm not sure that he's a star or anybody who's going to, make a big splash outside of Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers helped him out a lot. And Irv Smith will be a free agent as well. All right, that's it on the tight ends. All right, let's look at a couple of these coaching changes here and teams that need coaches. Frankie, what does the AFC look like?
It's pretty crazy, man. And it's still evolving, guys. So keep your ear to the phone to understand what the hell is going on, right? So number one, we already talked about it. DeMeco Ryan is now the head coach of Houston. Love it. Sean Payton is now the head coach of the Broncos. Awesome job. Kellen Moore, prior offensive coordinator for the Cowboys, is now going across the way to that of the Chargers, which I think is a freaking perfect fit with Justin Herbert. And that style of offense, I think it's really awesome. Nathaniel Hackett, we mentioned, John, OC to the Jets. We have Jim Schwartz coming to the Brownies, baby. That's
right.
Oh, I love it. And then
get that psychopath on our defense, man. I love it.
And then Vic Fangio, huge sign by Miami for defensive coordinator. That defense is going to be nasty under Vic Fangio.
Yeah. Some of the coaching changes in the NFC here. Frank Reich. I'm a big fan of Frank Reich.
Yeah.
He was the former head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He is hired as the Panthers head coach. So that I think that's going to help bring that team along. They've got a lot of personnel they need to work on that team as well. Mike LaFleur, former Jets OC, is hired as the Rams OC. Going to be with Sean McVay. That's pretty interesting. Still vacant are some jobs here in the NFC. The Cardinals head coach. They just hired a new GM. They're looking for a head coach, and I think that's all based upon Kyler Murray.
And John, quick question on the Cardinals head coach. There's been a lot on the Panthers, before we switch gears, on the Panthers head coach, Steve Wilks. And when you said Cardinals, that reminded me of when he was the head coach of the Cardinals. But Steve Wilks took this team 6-6, interim head coach. A lot of people are pissed off that he did not get the opportunity to continue to coach. Do you think that Steve Wilks would potentially would do a better job than that of Frank Reich?
I don't know. It's very difficult to tell, but I think it's more of a culture thing with Frank Reich. I think they know they're going to have to bring in, they're in the market for a new quarterback. They're going to have to bring in some receivers as well. I think that they need Frank Reich for the stability. I think he's a stable guy. I think he's a good guy to kind of level steady the boat while you've got everybody else kind of doing things. They may make a splash, in other areas of the coaching, but I think Frank Reich's a good pick for that. I really do.
Nice.
Yeah. Still vacant, like I said, Cardinals head coach. The Buccaneers offensive coordinator. They got rid of Byron Leftwich, so they need a coordinator. They also need a quarterback with Tom Brady being gone. The Washington Commanders, they also need an OC, and the Cowboys. Cowboys are looking for an OC as well, man, with Kellen Moore moving on over to the Chargers.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
Very interesting to see what happens with those teams, because those are some high-flying, especially with the Commanders, man. When we're talking about Ron Rivera and that culture that he's looking to implement, I really think it's catching on. And I believe in Ron Rivera.
I do
and
too.
Now they're a quarterback and an OC away from doing something great. And so, we talked about, John, all of these different quarterbacks. Don't be surprised if one of them goes to the Commanders and makes something crazy happen. I mean, it could, and then, you pair that with whoever that OC is going to be. That for me, that's a fun situation. I'm going to be paying attention.
It is, and I want that team to be more fantasy relevant. I really do. Terry McLaurin is too good to just die in a terrible quarterback carousel. Jahan Dotson, very strong, very good rookie receiver this year. Brian Robinson, really good rookie running back. I mean, they've just got and their defense is fucking great.
Yes.
I mean, their front seven is awesome. So this team, and then you've got Ron Rivera. You got Riverboat Ron. I mean, he proven success in the NFL, well respected. So this team is, I think, on the brink as well. You've got some teams like with Washington, like the Jets, Jaguars. I mean, starting to elevate
Giants.
a bit. Giants. I mean, there's some teams that really have a ton of potential for next year. So I'm excited, man. Let's look forward to it. Let's do this, baby. Anything else you want to talk about with these free agents, Frankie?
No, sir.
Yeah. My brother, that is season 2 in the books. Season 2 is wrapped. Hey, I want to thank everybody. This has been so much fun. I can't wait to jump in, man. I wish we could start looking at rookies right now. I wish the draft was happening. We're going to start off next year with our rookie review. We're going to have some great interviews next year. We're going to do new faces and new places, talking about where the guys we just talked about ended up landing and what their actual fantasy value is looking to be. So much fun, man. We're going to get you guys ready for your drafts next year. We're going to start a little earlier next year so you get a lot more of us prior to the draft. So please subscribe on YouTube, Frankly Fantasy Football on Facebook, on Instagram. Follow us throughout the offseason here at Frankly Fantasy Football and on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F. Big thanks to people. Frankie, why don't you thank a couple of our friends that have helped us make this absolutely fucking possible?
Guys, want to thank Liam Hickey. You are a champion, man. Just jumping in, doing the editing work, the slicing and dicing, and all of the shit that makes this happen, brother. And shout out, guys, for those of you who want to know a little bit about Liam, check him out, right? He is a business owner. He is really diving into the artist world in terms of music. And, if you're into that thing and you're a good artist, check out Liam Hickey. He does have connections for you. So shout out, brother. Appreciate you. Jesse Kelsey, love you, man, for all of the stuff that you have helped with from socials, etc. Brother, that goes a long way. And obviously, Anthony Sistone, dude, your music creativity and what you're doing, not only for us, but also for Plume and all of that, man, it is beautiful. Guys, again, I want to give a huge shout out to Plume. If you have not listened to it and you're ready to get a little bit of funky in you and go, a little bit of psychedelic rock, a little bit of mix of, some Grateful Dead with maybe some Doors / kind of thing, it is fucking awesome. Plume, give them a check out. And so, guys, and again, just want to thank you all. Johnny kept saying it. I'm going to say it again. We can do this, and we do this anyways, but you guys sending us stuff, sending us mugs, making cups, making shirts, doing all this shit. Guys, we love you, and that is genuine, and we're going to make this bigger, better, more badass coming next year. Stay with us. Stay tuned. Hop on this train, baby.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our sponsor, CalSpra Employee Recruitment Services, as well. It was great to have an actual sponsor this year. Helps us pay for the podcast. This is not free. No. It costs us money every single week to do this and produce it. So I want to thank CalSpra. It really gave us an opportunity to do some extra things this year with some Facebook and Google ads and things. So thank you so much to our sponsor. And please feel free, contribute to us, sponsor us. We are welcoming any and all sponsors. But you know what? We're not focused on that. We're just going to give you great episodes. Right, we're going to have a good time. We're going to give you good content to help you win your Super Bowl. And you know what? We had a lot of Frankly Fantasy listeners win their fucking Super Bowls this year. So great job, guys. Love seeing it. Frankie, I love you, my man.
Love you, man.
I do. Can't wait to see you in person again. I miss you already, man. All right, everybody, have a great off season. We will see you for the 2023 fantasy football season, and get you ready for your damn drafts. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.